Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Toronto. Thanks for joining us again this morning. We have a great topic to talk about, which is market transition. And this conversation we want to gear more towards our agent colleagues and talk a little bit about how it's okay to acknowledge that the market has changed. If you are listing a property, it is okay to discuss with a buyer's agent that the market is different than it
Right.
was 4, 5, 6 months ago. And having this acknowledgement and this collegiate way of approaching it is really super important to success for your client, because ultimately we are hired to bring in offers when we are the listing agent, and we are hired to secure accepted offers when we are the buyer's agent. And we can't do those things without having conversations with the agent on the other side. So, Tom, how would you approach this?
Well, number one, I would approach it first by talking with my seller client that, we're going to try a strategy of coming on the market with a certain price. And if we don't execute a sale in the first, 5, 7 days, and we know they want to sell, we'll ask them permission. Can I have more frank conversations with people? And
Right.
and if they say yes, then we want to make sure that we're honoring the wishes of our seller. And then, when agents call to show the property, I would have conversations with them, and I would say, no, probably the most honest thing I could say right now is, with the cost of capital changing so quickly, pricing right now is really challenging.
It is.
So because it's really challenging, if your buyer comes through the property and they like it, let's get a conversation together. Bring forward an offer with terms that feel right to your buyer, and let's see if we can have a meeting of the minds. Because I think the biggest challenge right now is that when I wear my buyer's agent hat and I call a listing agent and I say, hey, is there any flexibility on the price? And they say to me, Tom, 6 months ago, I could have sold this property for 100K more. That is probably my biggest pet peeve right now, because I'm saying to them, well, 6 months ago, the interest rates were 3%. And now my client's cost to carry this property is, 30% more.
Mhm.
So, or double, and that we need to break that cycle, because like
Yep.
Joanne said in the introduction, prices have been going up for the last decade. And if we are going to be successful in bringing deals together, we have to work collaboratively, and we have to leave the past in the past, because we
Mhm.
are in a changing environment, right?
Yep.
And Joanne, what are other things that, listing agents can do to be collaborative to a fellow buyer agent?
Well, I think one of the things that I find that I love the most when I'm out as a buyer's agent making appointments is having the properties available for showing.
Yes. Yep.
So, a lot of showings can be bottlenecked by schedules, and it's not the best way for your client if you bottleneck and can't get things scheduled.
Right.
But I think having the property available to do the showing, whether it's accompanied or not, because every market is a little bit different. So
Right.
some agents are accompanying the showing as a listing agent, and some are accessing lock boxes. And so my feeling is that having a free flowing schedule and making it easy for people to schedule is like the first way to kind of break down the barrier. But then having a conversation with these agents after they show the property. So you may say, well, my seller really acknowledges that the carpets are at end of life, and that the next, owner of this home will want to replace the carpet, and it's X number of square feet, and maybe they don't want carpet and they want hardwood. I want you to know that my seller is cognizant of this. And if that's a hang up for your buyer, like, let's talk about how we can get around it.
Right.
And that goes for anything with condition that is easily changed. Being able to have these open and honest conversations between agents ultimately is how deals come together and how you're able to make win-win situations. So I would encourage any agent who hasn't been in the market, longer than 10 years to spend a little bit of time just easing your way into these conversations, because they can feel uncomfortable. But ultimately, this is what your client has hired you to do, is to vet out every opportunity that's out there.
Right. And negotiations are not always just part when a written contract comes in. Like
Hmm.
part of your job at negotiating can start on that first showing and getting someone to bring an offer.
Right.
If you're a newer agent or you haven't experienced a market where you have to negotiate deep, getting to yes, getting past no is a really good negotiating book.
Mhm.
Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. Like, really diving in and, growing your tactical skills. I was recently looking at the NAR buyer profile for 2021, and
Mhm.
like 20% of people hired an agent for their ability to negotiate. And that's a
Right.
pretty high amount,
That is.
and, so that's a really, really important piece as a listing agent and as a buyer's agent. But as the listing agent, if you got people coming through that door and they're filling out the feedback or they're not filling out the feedback, don't be afraid to pick up the telephone and call people. I think
Right.
that's a skill set that people really need to,
And
kind of dial into again.
yeah, and if nothing comes from it, nothing comes from it. But
Right.
you've left the door open and you've had the conversation, maybe these people say, "Oh, well, we just decided not to live in this. My
Right.
buyers have decided not to live in this location, so we're going to be, taking this off the list."
Right.
And that's totally fine. But at least you have reached out and made the effort to try and pull in somebody with any level of interest in the property to try and make something that works for
Right.
both parties, because that is ultimately what people want us to do.
Yeah, exactly. So just thank you again for watching Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Toronto. Cheers.